to celebrate the conservation of over 400 acres of forest and farmland in Cornwall. Father Schleter, and Ledley Laughlin is here, he was rector of St. Luke's in the Field. Father Schleter in 1915, who was rector of St. Luke's in the Field, bought all of this 500 acres as a camp for inner city boys. In fact, some of my kids volunteered to help here when it was sort of at the end of its thing. It remained undeveloped ever since, and you can see part of what is now Trinity Forest Preserve. That the crest of the hill behind us is the state forest. The Conservation Trust now owns up to the crest. You can be confident that 100 years from now, this forest will still be preserved as it has been for the last 100 years. The same can be said for the Cooley Preserve on Cherry Hill. Together with the adjoining Hart Preserve, that will continue to be farmland in Cornwall. Yeah, right. He's excited about it. Yahoo. All right, so I'm going to say 6 thank yous and then point out 4 things that the Conservation Trust is going to do for the next 5 years. First, thank you. The board of the Cornwall Conservation Trust and I would like to thank Trinity Church, Wall Street, Heidi and Joe Rose. Where's Joe is the new director with Heidi of this retreat center, and the Cooley family for selling their property to the Conservation Trust for conservation. In the case of Trinity, thank you particularly for your patience over the 4 years it took us to raise the money to buy it. That's not the kind of patience you usually get in real estate. And in the case of the Cooley family, they were patient, and they also agreed to sell that beautiful view south over the Housatonic Valley for 33% less than its appraised value. The second thing I would like, the second group, and I know these governing bodies don't get enough thanks these days, I would like to thank our country, our state, and our town, and our elected officials for supporting conservation in Cornwall. Together, they provided 75%, over $1 million, to buy and conserve this 400 acres. And that thanks goes, because we got state, federal, and town money, so it goes to Governor Malloy, Senators Blumenthal and Murphy, Congresswoman Esty, State Senator Chapin, State Representative Willis. Roberta is here, and she also got Wild and Scenic for this stretch of the Housatonic. And then our selectmen, Gordon Ridgway, Richard Bramley, and Heidi Kearns. The next thank you is to the Housatonic Valley Association and its Greenprint Collaborative. Lynn Werner and Connie Maines are both here from there. And they, besides supporting conservation throughout the Housatonic River watershed, they found a donor willing to contribute $200,000 to the $1,400,000 we needed to buy this property and the Cooley property. The $200,000 was for this. And the result of that purchase of 300 acres here is to take that state forest that's next to it, which is 700 acres, and in effect make it 1,000 acres of undivided forest. So I want to thank HVA and their Greenprint Collaborative for that kind of incredible support from outside Cornwall to help us conserve these properties. The next group I'd like to thank are Connecticut Farmland Trust and the Connecticut Land Conservation Council. Farmland Trust owns or holds the farm easement on the Cooley property, which enabled us to get $225,000 from the federal government to protect that farmland. And Elizabeth Moore is the director, and she's back there. Welcome and thank you. And Nick Moore is on their board. No relation, I'm told. But both of those organizations have been instrumental in saving land in this area. Fifth, I'd like to thank the professionals who worked on this, and that included Linda Francois, one of the best land attorneys in the state, knows her conservation. Mark Capelsalatro, who's not here, Shelley Harms, Harry White, and Kara Weigold. Kara is our webmaster, among other things. And lastly, I'd like to thank all of you. Without your support and contributions to the Conservation Trust, we couldn't do this. And there would be no celebration today without you all. So I want to, as the sixth and final thank you all. Okay. So what are we going to do now? There are four things that we're going to focus on. We had a new strategic plan. The Conservation Trust is about 30 years old. There are a number of people here. I see Gene Vitalis, who I think was on the board at one point, and I know Ralph Gold was, and Dave Delinsky. 30 years ago, they thought it would be a good idea to have a conservation trust in Cornwall, and lo and behold, we own over 1,000 acres today and have preserved another 600 acres in conservation easements. Quite an accomplishment over 30 years. So the first thing we're going to focus on is helping our community enjoy nature more by improving our trails and looking for other land with forests to connect our forests. And if you're interested in volunteering, Johan Windsor is going to head up our trail crew, and we're give you an opportunity to get out on the trails with us. There's nothing like a walk in the forest to raise your spirits, so I recommend that. That's number one. Number two, we're going to manage more of our properties for habitat, try and improve bird life. I don't think we need more bears. I just lost my last hive to a bear the other day. But we're going to improve habitat. Number three, we're going to do more to promote farmland and farming in Cornwall. That's an important part of the character of Cornwall, and I know that we'll be successful in helping that come about. And finally, we're going to do something to keep the financial support strong for the Conservation Trust. We own now more than $7 million worth of property, and this is supposed to be a forever proposition. So we need to find out ways to sustain this corporation on into the next 30 years. So those are the four things we're going to do to help the Conservation Trust into the future. And last, I want to report that the Cornwall Conservation Trust has joined the major leagues of land trusts in America. We have been nationally accredited by the Land Trust Alliance. That's sort of the good housekeeping seal of approval, but most importantly, our children and grandchildren deserve a future that includes both forests and farmland, and the Cornwall Conservation Trust is committed to seeing that happen. So thank you again for your support for the Conservation Trust, and thank you for coming to celebrate.
Thank you, Bart.
Thank you, Bart.
So now enjoy the iced tea and the atmosphere.